Revenge is an ancient primal emotion. When justice falls silent or bows to power, there are those who choose to act. With cold determination or blind rage, revenge is the thread that runs through some of the most shocking stories in human history. Dante, in his journey through the Inferno, disapproved of personal vengeance, relegating it to the souls of the violent and wrathful. Yet even in the verses of Divine Comedy, the dark allure of private justice resonates. Revenge is a dish best served cold, goes the old saying, and history proves it. From medieval courts to pirate-infested seas, from bloody thrones to temples of memory, every age has had its avenger. In this video, we explore 5 of history's most famous revenges, true stories full of pathos that changed the course of events and marked the protagonists forever, and those who made them suffer. I will take my revenge, and it will be terrible, quotes at Edmond Dantès in The Count of Monte Cristo. Today we tell you who really did it. Spartacus' revenge against the Romans, 73 to 71 BC. Spartacus was born in Thrace around 109 BC, probably into an aristocratic family of the Mede tribe. As a young man, he served in the Roman army in Macedonia, but deserted. He was captured and enslaved, possibly with his wife, a priestess of the Dionysian cult. Sold to a gladiator school in Capua, he was forced to fight for the entertainment of the Roman aristocracy. But in 73 BC, he managed to escape with about 70 companions. Armed only with kitchen knives and agricultural tools, they took refuge on Mount Vesuvius. There, they easily defeated the first troops sent to capture them. Spartacus, an expert in Roman tactics, was chosen to lead the revolt. His leadership turned a desperate escape into a real war. He was joined by thousands of slaves, shepherds, and peasants, attracted by the hope of freedom. The rebel army grew to over 100,000 men. His men were not just warriors, they were living symbols of revolt against injustice. Spartacus organized an autonomous community. The spoils were shared. The weakest were protected. Good men were given military training. The aim was no longer just to escape. It was to change the rules of the game. The Roman legions sent to stop him were defeated one by one. After the death of Crixus, Spartacus swore revenge and forced 300 Roman prisoners to fight as gladiators. The message was loud and clear. The roles had been reversed. In 72 BC, even though he was free to leave Italy, Spartacus returned, perhaps to overthrow Rome itself. But the Senate responded by placing Marcus Licinius Crassus in command. Spartacus tried to reach Sicily to extend the revolt, but was betrayed by pirates. Trapped in Calabria, he managed to break the siege and defeat Crassus, but time was not on his side. The troops were exhausted, and Roman reinforcements, Pompey and Lucullus, were on their way. Crassus, determined to claim all the glory, provoked the final confrontation in 71 BC. Spartacus faced death with honor. It is said that he killed his own horse before the battle, saying, "If I win, I will have more. If I lose, I shall have none." He fought like a hero, killed 2 centurions, tried to reach Crassus, but was overpowered. His body was never found. His was collective revenge, not a personal one, a fierce revolt against systemic oppression. After his death, Crassus had 6,000 prisoners crucified along the Appian Way. But now the legend was born. Spartacus became an eternal symbol of resistance, inspiring revolutionary movements down the centuries. For Marx, he was the hero of the ancient proletariat. For Rosa Luxemburg, a beacon of class struggle. Olga of Kiev's revenge on the Drevlins. After the murder of her husband Igor by the Drevliani tribe in 945, Olga of Kiev suddenly found herself ruling the kingdom as regent for her son Sviatoslav, who was only 3 years old at the time. The main sources that tell her story, such as the Chronicle of Past Years by the monk Nestor and the Praise of Yakov, describe her ruthless and ingenious revenge against the Drevlians. The latter, eager to take control of Kiev by exploiting the new ruler's youth, proposed to Olga that she marry their Prince Mal. But Olga was determined to retain power, both for herself and to secure her son's future. She responded to the proposal with a series of calculated and brutal acts, orchestrating a revenge that would go down in history. The first episode unfolded with the arrival in Kiev of 20 of the Drevlian's best men, sent to persuade Olga to accept the marriage. Pretending to accept the proposal, Olga had them transported in a boat and then ordered them buried alive. No survivors returned to report. Not satisfied, the queen sent a message to Prince Mal saying that she had accepted the idea of marriage, but asked to be accompanied by a retinue of advisors and nobles, the wisest of her people. The Drevlians, unaware of the trap, sent their most influential representatives. When they arrived in Kiev, Olga received them with great courtesy and offered them a restorative bath before the meeting. But as soon as they entered the compound, the doors were locked and the building set on fire. No one came out alive. The third act of revenge was organized on the occasion of Igor's funeral. Olga invited the Drevliani military leaders and dignitaries to the ceremony. After getting them drunk at the funeral banquet, she ordered her soldiers to massacre them. In one fell swoop, much of the Drevlian's political and military elite was wiped out. But Olga did not stop. Driven by an unrelenting determination, she gathered her army and marched against the remaining Drevlians. Terrified, the Drevlians begged her for mercy, offering a rich tribute of honey and furs in exchange for their lives. Pretending to accept the offer, Olga made a seemingly innocuous request. She asked each house to send her 3 pigeons and 3 sparrows. When he had gathered the animals, he tied a piece of sulfur wrapped in cloth to each one. When night fell, he gave the order to light the sulfur and release the birds. The animals instinctively returned to their nests, mostly in the thatched and wooden roofs of the Drevlian houses, and started a series of simultaneous fires. In a short time, the town was engulfed in flames. Not a single house was left standing. The fleeing inhabitants were captured by Olga's soldiers. Many were killed, others enslaved, some taken as further tribute. According to the chronicles, the people of Drevliani disappeared from Russian history after this massacre. The story of Olga's revenge has an almost epic tone, comparable to the Nordic sagas, suggesting a possible Germanic cultural influence brought by the Variagi. It is significant that the ferocity that characterized Olga in the first years of her reign seems to disappear in the chronicles after her conversion to Christianity. This event marked a profound change in her historical figure, from a vengeful queen to a holy and merciful ruler, so much so that she was canonized as a saint of the Orthodox Church. However, her revenge on the Drevlians remains one of the most impressive episodes of her reign, a demonstration of her cunning, determination, and unwavering will to protect the power of the dynasty. As in the case of Spartacus, albeit in a different context and with different motives, Olga's violence was a direct response to injustice. But whereas Spartacus fought to liberate an oppressed people, Olga acted to defend political stability and the survival of her own royal house. Jeanne de Clisson. Jeanne de Clisson, also known as Jeanne de Belleville and known as the Lioness of Brittany, was born in the Vendée in 1300. A Breton noblewoman of strong character, she became a feared privateer to avenge the brutal execution of her husband, Olivier IV de Clisson, accused of treason by the King of France, Philip VI. Over the course of her life, Joan married 4 times. Her third marriage, celebrated in 1330, was to Olivier de Clisson, a powerful Breton lord. The couple had 5 children and sided with the French faction in the War of the Breton Succession, supporting Charles of Blois against the English claims of his rival, John of Montfort. In 1342, Olivier was taken prisoner during the capture of Vannes but was released in exchange for an English prisoner. The unusually low ransom aroused suspicion among his allies. Charles of Blois, suspicious of Olivier's loyalty, accused him of treason. Despite the ongoing truce, Olivier was lured by deception to a tournament in French territory. There he was arrested, brought to Paris, and condemned to death without a transparent trial. On 2 August 1343, he was publicly beheaded in Les Halles. The execution, without any concrete evidence, horrified the nobility and deeply scarred Jeanne. Devastated and angry, Jeanne vowed revenge against King Philip VI and Charles of Blois. She took her children to Nantes to show them their father's head, which was placed on the city gates as a warning, and to inspire them with a desire for justice. Shortly afterwards, he sold all the family property and used the proceeds to raise a small army of loyalists. With the help of English and Breton supporters, Joan armed 3 warships and had them painted black with blood-red sails. Thus was born the legendary Black Fleet, with which Joan began to patrol the English Channel, mercilessly attacking French ships. The survivors were left alive only to spread terror and tell of the wrath of the Lioness of Brittany. Her fame spread quickly, fooling tales of courage and vengeance. In 1356, Joan married for the 4th time Walter Bentley, an English commander who had fought in the same war. They settled at Hennebont Castle, where Joan spent her last years. She died in 1359. Leaving behind a legend steeped in blood, determination, and warrior spirit. The revenge of Peter I. Peter I of Portugal, known as the Executioner, but also nicknamed the Cruel or the Vengeful, was the 8th king of Portugal and the Algarve, reigning from 1357 to 1367. Born in Coimbra on 18 April 1320, he was the 4th son of King Alfonso IV of Portugal and Princess Beatrice of Castile. Although he was the 3rd son, he became heir to the throne at birth, following the early deaths of his older brother. His love life was marked by strong passions and dramatic events. In 1325, when he was only 5 years old, he married the Castilian princess Bianca of Castile, but the marriage was never consummated due to the young age of the couple and was annulled in 1330. On 24 August 1339, Peter was remarried in Lisbon to Constance Manuel, a Castilian princess with whom he had 3 children: Louis, who died in infancy, Maria, and Ferdinand, the future King Ferdinand I. However, it was his relationship with Jeanne de Castro, lady-in-waiting to his wife Constanza, that defined his history and memory. Peter fell madly in love with Jeanne and increasingly neglected his wife and children. When Constanza died in 1346, his relationship with Jeanne became public. Despite the opposition of his father Alfonso IV, Peter seems to have married her in secret that same year. They had 4 children: Beatrice, Alfonso, who died young, Giovanni, and Dionigi. The growing influence of Inez's Castilian family and the fear that her children might jeopardize the succession to the throne to the detriment of her nephew Ferdinand drove Alfonso IV to an extreme gesture. In January 1355, fearing the political consequences of her position at court, he ordered the assassination of Jeanne de Castro. Peter's reaction was furious. Shaken by the loss of his beloved, he organized an army and waged a brief civil war against his father in northern Portugal. The conflict ended in 1356, and early the following year, Peter and Alfonso reconciled, with the prince forced to formally pardon the murderers. However, the death of Alfonso IV on 28 May 1357 marked the beginning of revenge. Once on the throne, Peter lost no time in identifying and executing those who had killed Inez. In 1360, he made his secret marriage official and retroactively declared Inez Queen of Portugal. According to one legend, Peter had Inez's body exhumed, dressed her in royal robes, placed her on a throne, and symbolically crowned her, forcing the nobles and clergy to kiss her hand in homage. Although the veracity of the episode is disputed, the story reflects the depth of the bond between Peter and Inez and the king's desire to honor her memory. Throughout his reign, Peter I was characterized by an unyielding commitment to justice. He reformed the judicial system and sought to ensure fairness between citizens, earning himself the nickname executioner. He increased the crown's revenues and limited the privileges of the church and maintained a neutral foreign policy except for an intervention on the side of Peter, IV of Aragon, in the so-called War of the Two Peters. Peter I died in the Alentejo on 18 January 1367 and was buried in the monastery of Alcobaça. He was succeeded by his son, Ferdinand. He is remembered not only for the reforms and austerity of his reign, but above all for his torturous love affair with Inés de Castro and the violent revenge that followed, events that have profoundly shaped the history and imagination of Portugal. The Wrench of the 47th Ronin. Japan's samurai in extreme honor. The story of the 47 Ronin is one of the most famous episodes in Japanese culture, symbolizing loyalty, honor, and sacrifice. Set in the early 18th century during the Edo period, it reflects the strict samurai ethic and complex political dynamics of the time. In 1701, Asano Naganori, lord of the fief of Ako, was ordered to receive an imperial envoy in Edo. He was instructed in the ceremonial by Kira Yoshinaka, a powerful court official who expected a generous gift in return. Asano refused, considering it dishonorable for a samurai. Offended, Kira began to publicly humiliate him to the point of desperation. Asano attempted to strike him with a wakizashi in Edo Castle, but failed. Kira was only injured, but the attack in a sacred place was considered extremely serious. Asano was sentenced to death by seppuku the same day and his fiefdom was dissolved. His samurai, deprived of their master, became Ronin. Led by their most trusted vassal, Oishi Kuranosuke, the Ronin decided to avenge the injustice they had suffered. For almost 2 years, they discreetly planned their action. Oishi himself moved to Kyoto, where he adopted a dissolute lifestyle and pretended to have abandoned any intention of revenge. He even went so far as not to react when he was publicly insulted by a samurai from Satsuma. This behavior convinced Kira that he was now safe, but it was all part of the plan. On 30 January 1703, the 14th day of the 12th month of the year Genroku 15, the 47 Ronin gathered in Edo and attacked Kira's residence. Disguised as firemen to avoid suspicion, they split into 2 groups and stormed the building. The attack was swift and well organized. They killed 16 guards, wounded 22, and lost no men. They put up signs to make it clear that this was an act of revenge, not a crime. Kira was found hiding in a woodshed. Oishi offered him the chance to commit seppuku, but when he remained silent, he decapitated him with the same blade Asano had used. The Ronin took the head to Sengakuji Temple and placed it on their lord's grave. Then they surrendered to the authorities. The legend of the 47 Ronin became an enduring symbol of Japanese culture, inspiring countless plays, literature, and films, including the famous Kanate-jan Shuchingura. Their tombs at Sengakuji Temple in Tokyo are still places of pilgrimage, a testament to the enduring power of this story of honor, justice, and sacrifice. Conclusion. Revenge in all its forms reminds us how fragile and powerful the human soul can be. But if it is true, as Confucius says, that before taking revenge, one must dig 2 graves, it is perhaps equally true that some stories, however dark, continue to enlighten us with the tragic power of memory.